Hi, my name is Mrs. Chiverton. I'm one of the science directors, and this is your next lesson in Year 8 Hormones and Auxins. Before we start, can you make sure you've switched off any notifications on any devices that you are using so you don't get distracted? And you're going to need a pen and paper or your exercise book or a Google document open in order to complete the activities as we move through the lesson. If you need to go and collect those things, just pause the video and then restart it when you are ready to move on. Number 5 in the Year 8 series, Hormones and Auxins, and in today's lesson we're going to look at something called IVF. So a starter, just thinking back on some of the work that we've done previously, what can you actually recall? So can you name the 4 hormones that control the menstrual cycle and tell me what each of them actually does in controlling the menstrual cycle? And I'm going to give you 2 minutes to get your answers down for that. Okay, so you should have had a good chance to complete that. Let's have a look at some answers. So this is how things change through the menstrual cycle, as I'm sure you remember, and we have 4 hormones there and their levels change constantly through the cycle, and in combination they control that menstrual cycle. So the 4 hormones you should have identified were follicle stimulating hormone, which causes an egg to mature in an ovary, luteinizing hormone, which causes the egg to be released from the ovary, estrogen, which stops the production of FSH so that only one egg matures in a cycle, and progesterone, which maintains the lining of the uterus. Now, at least 2 of these hormones could be very useful if a woman is struggling to get pregnant and could be administered to help her get pregnant. So which of those 2 hormones do you think would be useful in terms of helping a woman who is struggling to get pregnant in order to get pregnant? Which could she have perhaps as injections that would help her to get pregnant? So hopefully you've thought about that and you will have realised that these 2 are probably the best ones to help her to get pregnant. We need eggs to mature in the ovary and we need eggs to be released from the ovary. And that connects with our topic today. So by the end of today, you should be able to describe the process of IVF and also evaluate the use of IVF. And we'll talk about what the word evaluate means later on in the lesson. Some of you might have heard the term test tube baby before, and some of you might have some ideas. So just want you to have a think about what you think the word test tube or the term test tube baby actually might mean. Now, in reality, we're not growing a whole baby in a test tube, as is intimated by the picture there. But for a baby that is classed as a test tube baby, their very first start of life does actually occur either in a test tube or in a petri dish. And the technical name for this is IVF, or in vitro fertilization. And the reason it's called in vitro fertilization is that in Latin, which is a language that we do use in science, in vitro means in glass. And so therefore it's referring to the Petri dish or the test tube where fertilization, the meeting of the sperm and egg cells, actually occur. And a lot of people don't know the details of what happens in IVF. So if you listen carefully to this video all about in vitro fertilization. Now, in vitro fertilization will only be used if a couple have, or a person, a lady has tried to have babies by natural methods but has been unsuccessful. It could be that there might be damage to her reproductive organs, lots of different reasons. So if you listen to this video, it explains the procedure.
In vitro fertilization helps infertile couples overcome barriers that prevent them from conceiving. In this procedure, the woman receives injections of hormones for about 10 days to stimulate her ovaries to produce a large number of mature eggs. In a normal month, a single egg might mature, but with these supplemental hormones, a woman might produce as many as 20 mature eggs. Doctors can collect the mature eggs through a small incision in the woman's abdomen or by a needle that is inserted through the top of the vagina. The eggs are drawn out of the ovaries and placed in a tube containing culture medium. The male provides a semen sample. Approximately 60,000 of his sperm are added to the tube. On average, the sperm succeed in fertilizing 70 to 80% of the eggs. The glass tube or dish gives this procedure its name. Translated from Latin, in vitro means in glass. If the sperm have trouble swimming to the eggs, another development in the procedure can remove this barrier. Working with the aid of a microscope, a technician can give the sperm some help by injecting a single sperm into the cytoplasm of each egg. This procedure is called intracytoplasmic sperm injection. After 2 days, the fertilized eggs have divided to form multicellular embryos. 2 to 3 of the healthy-looking embryos are then placed into the uterus of the female. In 50% of these attempts, in vitro fertilization leads to pregnancy. A single embryo may progress to a full-term pregnancy, but there is also a chance that a few will survive, resulting in twins or triplets.
So just to summarise, first of all, hormones are injected into the woman over a long period of time. This causes ovarian stimulation. So in other words, the injections cause eggs to mature in the ovaries and to be released. Then, using a small surgical procedure, they put a large needle into the woman's abdomen and they are able to collect the eggs. The eggs are then mixed with the sperm sample from the father and hopefully they will actually fertilize. The sperms will join with the egg cells, but it isn't always 100% successful. They grow those embryos for a few days in the laboratory. They check for them being healthy. They check the best ones, and they will implant between 2 and 3 embryos back into the mum. Any embryos that are left over can actually be frozen in liquid nitrogen, so that if a couple wanted a second child, they have some embryos ready for that embryo transfer process. Some women choose to donate their unwanted embryos for research, or for women who wouldn't be able to have a baby under any other circumstances. So these are the steps, and what I want you to do is to put them in order. So you need to write them out in the correct order of what actually happened. And I'm going to give you about 3 minutes for you to complete that, because there's quite a lot of writing to do. Okay, that should have been enough time for you to get those things down. If you haven't quite got them done, just pause the video and you can have another go. Here are the examples. So we should have had that production of eggs is stimulated through hormone therapy. We should have said that the eggs were collected from the ovary. Then the sperm sample is collected. The sperm and the eggs are combined and allowed to fertilise. And then some of the fertilised eggs are introduced into the woman's uterus and hopefully will result in a pregnancy for them. So that's a kind of summary of the steps of what's going on. So hopefully you managed to get all 5 right. I need to look at our second learning outcome, our Aspire one, and I used the word evaluate. And I need you to understand what the word evaluate means and how we would evaluate a piece of text, so a piece of writing. So when we look at the word evaluate in science, we need you to use the information supplied, as well as your own knowledge and understanding, to consider evidence for and against, so pros and cons, good things and bad things, about that piece of information, about what's said there, and then also give your own opinion that is based on this. So this is quite a high level skill, but we can start off simply with looking at in the information what is for a process or against a process, and then a simple opinion from you. So what does the word ethical mean? Ethical means a judgment as to whether something is right or wrong. So for example, some people think it's wrong to use IVF because not all of the embryos are used, and they're concerned about what happens to the other embryos because those embryos are potentially alive. So what you are going to do is you are going to read in sections, and I'm going to read through it with you, the NHS evaluation of fertility treatments. And at the end of it, your task will be to create an extended piece of writing where you evaluate the use of fertility treatments. And in that piece of writing, you might want to discuss the following points. So it's important to say why people would have fertility treatments. What are the advantages of having fertility treatments? So what are the good things regarding fertility treatments? What are the disadvantages of having fertility treatments? And you might want to think there about the mother's health and so on. And are there any ethical concerns regarding IVF? Now, I've mentioned one previously, but you may be able to find some other examples of ethical concerns regarding IVF. I have put the NHS valuation across several slides. I will read through it with you. But again, if you want to pause the video when you get to the point of doing your extended writing, please do so. And you can then rewind it back and read the information again to yourself. So this is their NHS evaluation of infertility treatments. The NHS has to choose which couples they can fund for IVF. If they cannot be treated on the NHS, some people choose to pay privately for the treatment. This is very expensive and costs approximately £5,000. Now that will be £5,000 for every attempt, and it isn't always successful. So the chances of a successful pregnancy vary depending on the age of the woman involved. As a woman's age increases, the chances of conception decrease, so she's less likely to be able to get pregnant. In particular, the chances of a woman over the age of 43 becoming pregnant decreases to a 5% success rate. So data from the NHS Choices website shows that in 2010, the percentage of IVF treatments that resulted in a live birth were as follows: 32.2% for women under the age of 35, 27.7% for women aged 35 to 37, 20.8% for women aged 38 to 39, and 13.6% for women aged 40 to 42, 5% for women aged 43 to 44, or 1.9% for women aged over 44. Now, some advantages that you could think of for IVF is that it does allow people to have babies of their own who otherwise can't due to a variety of reasons. It does have a safe track record and has been used since 1978. The embryos can also be screened for genetic diseases, which is important for families that already have an affected child, and only unaffected embryos would be used, and therefore ensuring that any further babies were healthy. And then the unused eggs could be used for research or donated to other couples who cannot have a child of their own. Disadvantages of IVF. There are side effects from the drugs used, such as hot flushes and severe headaches. There's a possibility of multiple births. That means having twins or triplets, which is dangerous for the mother and the baby. Ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, or OHS, can occur when too many eggs develop in the ovaries. It can be a very emotionally and physically stressful time, and the success rates, as we've seen on the previous slide, are not high. Now, these are not the only advantages and disadvantages, and you might want to do some more research before you submit your piece of work, but this should get you started. Now, in terms of ethical concerns, remember, ethics is to do whether things are right or wrong. So some people worry about the ethical implications of IVF. They are concerned that couples may want designer babies with desirable qualities, so they may only want certain fertilized eggs. For example, they may want a girl if they've got lots of boys in the family. So they would want the embryos screened and only female embryos to be implanted and discard the male embryos. There is also the chance that along with genetic testing, which you'll learn more about in year 11, people could actually screen for certain characteristics like the colour of eyes or the colour of hair and so on by testing the genes. So that is a concern that a lot of people have. Also, as I've said before, the embryos that are not used may be destroyed, and some people consider embryos to be new lives, and therefore they view their destruction as unethical. It would be the same to them as killing a living baby. So, what we need to do now is for you to work independently on that task. When you are working, what you also need to do is to make sure that you are using your PROUD so that you are presenting your work well. Please make sure you have included in that an explanation as to why people would need to use fertility treatments. Please include several arguments as to why IVF should be used, and also several arguments as to why IVF should not be used. You then need to look at some of the ethical issues behind that, so whether it's right or it's wrong for whatever reason. And the final thing we need to do on an evaluation question is to give your opinion. So overall, I believe that. And it might be that overall you believe that IVF is wrong, but you need to back that up with a reason. Overall, you might believe that IVF is a good thing and that it should be available for everybody, and you need to give a reason. Or you might even think that IVF is a good thing, but only in certain situations, and therefore you could give those reasons why you have that opinion as well. There isn't a right or a wrong opinion, it is simply your opinion, so long as you can justify, you can say why you have that opinion. Now, what you need to do is to take some time to complete this. I would suggest, I'm going to leave the video running for 10 minutes, and that should be sufficient time for you to work through these ideas. But if you feel you need more time, you can simply pause the video and then you can look back on the information on the video and do your own research in order to add that information in. So I'm going to leave that video running for 10 minutes for you to complete this work. Okay, so that's your 10 minutes up. If you haven't completed your piece of work and you want some more time on it, please feel free to take some more time. So what I want to look at now is to use some of the information you've looked at and try and decide which of these 4 people you actually agree with, and you need to justify your answer to say why. So there's a lady there, she says that IVF allowed me to have a baby I've always wanted. Just because I'm 70 doesn't mean I should miss out on having children. There is a second lady that says, I'm worried about what happens to the unused embryos as they are potentially alive too, and I don't think IVF should be allowed. We have a gentleman at the bottom who says all birth control and fertility treatments are wrong. They go against nature. I'm always so angry. Ah. And we finally have been trying for a baby for 6 years now, and IVF is the only chance we have of having our own child. So you can pick each one of those. You can give them a letter if you wish to, and you need to decide, do you think, or do you agree with what's been said on there? Should they be allowed to have IVF? Should they not have been allowed to have IVF? And do you agree with that person's opinion? And you need to give a reason why you do agree with that. Okay, so there aren't any right or wrong answers to these, because these are about your opinion and being able to justify it. And justifying does mean using evidence. So I'm not going to go through right and wrong answers like we often do when we ask questions. It's simply about how you feel about what information is there. So your teacher may have set you a Google quiz to go with this lesson, which would be automatically marked. If they have, please complete that now. And these are some extra key learning points which you might want to add to your notes. So IVF is in vitro fertilisation. It means in glass and involves fertilising an egg cell in a petri dish or test tube. It's used for couples who have not been able to conceive by normal methods. It uses hormones to stimulate egg maturation, which are harvested and fertilised and then implanted back into the uterus. It is not always successful and can have health risks for the mother, but it can be very stressful and emotional for a couple. It can result in multiple births, and some people disagree with it on religious or ethical grounds. Thank you for listening today. I hope you've enjoyed your lesson on IVF, and I will see you for the next lessons in the Year 8 Hormones and Auxin series.